Most people want to have some form of authority online, a podcast, a starting point for that. And then obviously growing your business and building new relationships is the core of any business. So having a podcast makes that process just that much easier. It is the ultimate networking tool. The person, making a cold call or a cold email or a DM versus the person reaching out for an invitation to do something. I think those are two completely different conversations. And now it doesn't matter what business you have. If you're doing outreach and marketing of any sort, a podcast automatically goes to the front of the line with prioritization when it comes to, is it ads, is it network, is it events, is it in person, whatever it might be. I think that the podcast takes precedence. I got my big break with digitalmarketer.com. I was the MC for traffic and conversions for about 4 years. Ryan Dice gave me a shot. I hit him up on Twitter, hired me instantly, and I did that show 4 years, and that kicked open a lot of doors, a lot of relationships.
All right, guys, we are back with another episode of Marketing Without Rules, the show where we highlight business owners who exemplify the hunter mindset. They make moves, they color outside the lines, and they have found creative ways to channel the attention of their community into currency. This show is sponsored by Blue Crocus Solutions, a web design and SEO agency focused on helping home service companies. I am your host, Lewis Vandervalk, and today I have the pleasure of chatting with Sebastian Rusk. Sebastian is a seasoned keynote speaker, comedian, author, and digital storyteller with over 15 years of experience in building online communities. In 2016, he founded the Podcast Launch Lab, a turnkey podcast launch solution aimed at helping marketers and entrepreneurs share their stories through podcasting. Today, I want to chat with him about how podcasting can be an outreach tool, a just all-around multi-tool for helping you grow your business. Sebastian, welcome to the show.
Lewis, what's up, man? Great to be here, bro.
Awesome to connect. I know we went back and forth there a little bit, but tell people. I kind of did your hook in the title of this show. Podcasts suck if you don't have one. I believe you wrote a book on that, but tell us why podcasts suck if you don't have one. Let's just dive right in there.
Well, I think the podcasts are the ultimate networking tool, ultimate content solution, and ultimate improve your communication skills tool. So that's why it sucks. If you most people want to achieve those objectives. The time of recording this episode is 2025. Most people want to have some form of authority online. A podcast is a phenomenal starting point for that. And then obviously growing your business and building new relationships is the core of any business. So having a podcast makes that process just that much easier. It is the ultimate networking tool because it allows you to reach out to people. Instead of saying, let's book a sales call, let me do something for you first, make it all about you. And by default, I'm building rapport with you. And then from there, we can see where the conversation goes. And then once the podcast episode's done, then it's repurposed into multiple pieces of micro content. And in addition to that, if you suck at public speaking, if you've got that inner critic in overdrive with, I'm going to sound like crap, look like crap, yada, 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 yada. Eventually, all of that starts to get silenced and go away because of the podcast.
That is very true. That last point about the inner critic, when I first started podcasting in 2020, it was a terrifying thing. I was sweating. I actually couldn't even listen to myself back. I was like, I'm just going to record and go and make it happen. But let's go to the side of things that really are the coloring outside the lines, the marketing without rules side of what I want to extract from this is the networking side of things. Talk a bit. Can you give some like hard and easy to understand examples of? I was going to say hard and fast. That's what I was looking for, not hard examples. Some easy to understand examples or anecdotes of either yourself or clients that have used a podcast to get through, kind of a gatekeeper. I've always said that podcasts are a great networking tool. You articulate it so much better because this is what you do on a daily basis. But can you share that for the listeners?
I think that if you're starting a podcast and you have an existing pipeline, starting there is the great starting point before going and trying to hunt down the not so easy person to track down. I don't know that gatekeepers are as much of a thing these days or as hard to get past as they used to be. So, when we talk about the person, making a cold call or a cold email or a DM versus the person reaching out for an invitation to do something, I think those are two completely different conversations. One is you've got 100 other people doing the same thing, trying to get through. The other, we're still early enough in this podcast game that inviting someone to be on a podcast, knowing that they're your ideal client, I don't think that there's any lack of transparency there. I think it's obvious, but we all have egos and we all like them stroked. So being able to interview someone on a podcast allows you to do that. I've lived that since I started 15 years ago. That's how I built relationships with guys like Gary Vaynerchuk and Damon John and Jay Bear and some other industry powerhouses by simply saying, hey, I'd love to get you on the show. And that was before I was all in with podcasting. I've only been all in with podcasting for the past 9 of those 15 years, but I didn't plan it. I didn't originally plan to go, I'm going to start a podcast agency and then teach people that starting a podcast allows you to network with anybody and grow your business and increase sales. I just started to live that. I would identify people up to great things, no podcast, and then convert them to clients. And then I started to teach that. And now I've got, it doesn't matter what business you have. If you're doing outreach and marketing of any sort, a podcast automatically goes to the front of the line with prioritization when it comes to, is it ads? Is it network? Is it events? Is it in person? Whatever it might be. I think that the podcast takes precedence.
Can you tell the story of Gary Vee? I've seen you share parts and pieces of it on social media, but that's a pretty cool land.
Yeah. So he's great. First of all, one of the most humble, caring, and just incredible.
Is he like from what I've heard from people that have met him, he's exactly the same on camera and off camera. Is that correct?
Yeah, totally high energy. So it was 2010, and I had somebody randomly call me. I was trying to figure my shit out, and they called me and said, "Hey, you got to connect with this guy Gary Vaynerchuk. He just wrote a book called Crush It. You should buy it." And I was like, "I don't have any money." He's like, "You can log into my Audible account and download it and put it on your iPod, not iPhone, iPod." So I did that, and I immediately resonated with him. Every morning I was out on my walk and he's in there screaming at me and telling me what to do. And shortly thereafter, he was very accessible at that point. So I reached out to him and went back and forth with just some remote mentoring stuff, which he was great with. And then his second book, Thank You Economy, came out, and he had a book signing stop in Miami. So I was in with his team, the team around him, which was only like 3 or 4 people at the time. And a guy named Phil Toronto, who now runs the Vaynerx like venture fund, like their investment company. So they go out and they find projects they want to invest in. He's now the president of that, but it originally started off as Gary's right hand. Shout out to Phil. And I said, "Hey, I want to interview Gary." And I'm thinking it's going to be like a flip cam in a hallway real quick before the book signing type deal. A week before that, I had a film videographer company hit me up and be like, "Hey, we saw your work and we'd love to work with you." I'm like, "My work? I just got started." They're like, "Yeah, we really like it a lot." I said, "Great. What are you doing on Tuesday night? Next Tuesday?" They said, "We're free." I said, "Cool. Meet me at Books and Books here in Coral Gables. Guy named Gary Vaynerchuk's doing a book signing. You don't know who he is, but you will one day." And they're like, "Oh, perfect. We just did Russell Simmons' book signing there last month." I was like, "All right, perfect. This is all lining up." So I get there on Tuesday and Gary just walks up the street. He was staying at the hotel about a block away and just randomly walks up, and we got a chance to meet in person, and then went to the other side of the bookstore, and camera crew came in, and lights and cameras and mics and the whole deal. And we spent like an hour together. And those were my green days. I wasn't very good at interviewing, but we got it done. I built that rapport and then continued to, from there on out, every time I saw him, we were doing the same event because I started to MC a lot of events. So I would be the MC, he'd be the keynote. So I'd run into Philly and then San Diego. And then in 2018, he hosted his own event here at Dolphin Stadium called Agent 2021. And I hit him up and I'm like, "Hey man, love to cover the event." And so he looped me in with his team, and that whole Vayner team is extremely efficient, especially when Gary's like, "Hey, that's my boy. Let's get him in the mix." So I spent the day with him there and had an interview with him. That was the last time I saw him, was 2018. Now he's, a worldwide phenomenon, and I don't see or talk to him as much as I'd like to. I'm wildly, aggressively involved with his V-Friends collection, as you can see here behind me, and have become a collector of his V-Friends cards. And I'm just all in with that whole world because he's a collectibles and trading card guy.
He's been doing that forever.
Yeah, he was making like $3-4 grand a week as a kid doing that. So he's on to something with this, and V-Friends has become, it's Pokemon meets Sesame Street, and I think it's the next best thing. And it's just great. The ripple effect still continues on from that relationship, even though I don't talk to him and see him as often as I'd like to. But I'm eternally grateful. I attribute, outside of me doing the work, I attribute everything that I've been able to do up until now to his mentoring and to his guidance along the way. So yeah, shout out to Gary V.
Shout out to Gary. Yeah, he's a cool dude, making it happen out there for sure.
Sure is.
You mentioned back in the days when I wasn't good at interviewing. What makes a good interview?
Your ability to shut the fuck up and answer questions. I don't know if I can say that. Can I?
Yeah, you can say that.
It is. I learned from the great Larry King that it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, your guest is talking, 20% of the time, you're talking as the host, and it's your job to ask questions, let your guest answer those questions, and then you can add on to that. Really, tell me more about that. Kind of like what you're doing. You're doing a great job right now, asking questions and then also asking questions based on what my response and answers are. What you're not doing is making it all about you or taking your story or your Gary Vee story and talking about what you do with all that. Sure, you can be relatable to your guest, but again, it's your job to ask questions and lock it up.
Amazing. Cool. Did you lose me there for a second, or is it just on my side?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I thought maybe I was talking over you.
Okay, interesting. Video and audio disappeared for a second, but I think we're back and good. Cool. So networking, public speaking. I'm actually really curious. So you mentioned working on the public speaking side of things, and getting more comfortable with that through podcasting. That is something that I can turn on the camera and chat now much more comfortably than I could. I would be freaking out before. Was that something that you struggled with? Because I know you say you've been emceeing, you've been in comedy. Was that something you struggled with and attribute to podcasting, or is it just kind of a side effect you see other people work through?
Never, not one time. I stepped on stage in the summer of 2009, and I was like, "That's it. I was born for this shit." Yeah. And I started doing the MC stuff because if I didn't get booked to speak, I still wanted to be on stage. And then I did it for I don't know, had a good run. I did like probably 6 or 7 years. Then I was like, I don't like this. I got my big break with digitalmarketer.com. I was the MC for traffic and conversions for about 4 years. Ryan Dice gave me a shot. I hit him up on Twitter. He hired me instantly, and I did that show for like 4 years, and that kicked open a lot of doors, a lot of relationships. But it also led me to I didn't know what my thing was. So I would leave there, and I had my social media agency, but that really wasn't my thing. It was, creating social media content and running someone's social media. It's not long-term sustainable. So I found podcasting to really narrow down. And that was where I was really able to bridge the gap in between where I am and what people actually need, what problem I solve.
I follow your social media posts. You're super aggressive with your podcasting. Podcast sucks, start a podcast. Is that something that you've always done? Because it basically cements you as the podcast dude. You'll show a picture of your avocados on toast and be like, here's my breakfast, go start a podcast. Yeah. And you don't even say, start a podcast with myself. You don't even, point people back to you necessarily. When did you start doing that? And what has been the response to that aside, has there been similar response to what I just said there from people?
I mean, it's just about showing up consistently, showing up every single day and remaining top of mind. My first book was Social Media Sucks if you don't know what you're doing. So I just wanted to continue to, parlay the success of that book into podcasting. And it is a conversation starter. I was at an event last week in Brooklyn for On Air Fest, and I wore my podcast suck hat all week. And that thing was the talk of the town. Those are my peers, but that got the attention. I mean, I got cornered by speakers and attendees and volunteers and the whole nine on there. I think that you have to be memorable or you're going to be forgotten about quickly. And I have to have something, my brain has to complement my personality and what I actually do. So that I think that's all part of being memorable.
I love that. There's a marketing without rules nugget right there. Your brand has to complement what you actually do.
Yeah.
How did you come up with the suck mentality around branding in the sense of social media sucks or podcast sucks?
Yeah. Cause I was going to write my first book and be like, how to use social media. And I was working with my friend Michelle Villalobos at the time. And she was incredible. Actually, we were just meeting and chatting about the book coming out and the book title. And she's an incredible branding mind. And I was like, I think I'm going to call it How to Use Social Media. And she was like, yeah, that's not going to work with your personality. You need something
abrasive.
You got to punch someone in the face with it. And I was like, how about Social Media Sucks if you don't know what you're doing? She goes, that's it. Rest is history.
Podcast suck is so concise too, even better than the social media one, I think. Or maybe it's just because I've seen it 100 times on social media. So it's so familiar to me, right?
Yeah.
Very cool. Talk to me about, as a home service business owner, that's a lot of the people that are going to be listening to this. How can they go out today and start a podcast?
Well, I mean, there's several steps. So I've identified 14 on here, but first of all, hire somebody that can do all the work for you. Do not try to do all of this on your own. Don't try to record the episode, edit the episode, post the episode, create content. It's not sustainable. Feels like it'll start to feel like work. And when it feels like work, it's not fun. And when it's not fun, we quit. That's human nature. And I've been doing this for 9 years. And the people that are successful by doing this is making a conscious decision that I'm launching a podcast. I'm going to hire a professional that knows what they're doing to help me create a strategy, brand, concept, idea, and I'm going to have them go execute. So all I have to do is what I do best: run my business, host the interviews, post the clips. That's it. So that's my short answer with that. There's no, my book covers my entire process and then some, that you can grab at podcastsuck.com/book. My podcast about starting a podcast, Podcast Suck, go to podcastsuck.com for that. I break down my entire formula and then ongoing, episodes, everything that, whatever shows up for me. So I outline my whole process there on, what you need. I just think number one, you need to figure out why you're starting a podcast, get real clear on that, and then figure out exactly who you're going to work with.
Love that. And as someone who has been podcasting to a great degree or not, to some degree, showing up and recording and getting it out on the podcasting platforms, but not necessarily doing all the work that's required to really, really crush it. I agree. It's a lot of work. I did always have that passion, and I've always used it as a networking and whatnot tool. If you're looking to do this as a business owner who has a million things on the go, doesn't understand all of this, Sebastian offers this as a service. He didn't say that just as a pitch, though. It's a lot of work. And if you're doing it and then you get bogged down with work, you're going to be, what are the stats actually on how many people start a podcast and don't go past? I think it's like 10 episodes even.
Yeah, it's like 7 to 10 episodes. You'll be in the top like 21% of podcasts if you do, top 10% of podcasts if you do, I think it's 21 episodes. Hermosi posted something about it a while ago.
Yeah, that's wild. What's the craziest guest you've had? Craziest, coolest, whatever, aside from Gary Vee?
Gosh, that's a good question. I've done hundreds.
I just stumped Sebastian.
Yeah, you did. Next question. Yeah.
I love it. It's such a fascinating thing, and I'm really looking to break this down simply for those business owners that are out there and show them the value of it. How do you typically use this currently in your sales process?
I get in masterminds. I identify people that don't have a podcast, are doing 7 to 9 figures a year. They should have a podcast. They want to start a podcast, and I invite them on my show.
And then what do you talk about? Because you're not talking about, hey,
all right. So that's on my other show, Beyond the Story, and I tell their story.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So if a business owner is looking to use it as a networking tool, and they're like, oh, I don't have amazing things to talk about. That's the beauty of starting a podcast too, is you just have to bring on guests and get them to talk about it.
Right.
Because you just prompt them with questions. It's such a low impact way to get yourself out there while everyone else does the work, because they're bringing the stories.
Correct.
So it's a really interesting phenomenon. What's the most important thing when starting it, or what's something that people get wrong all the time?
Doing the work themselves.
You're going to keep coming back to that.
Yeah, I'm not going to stop. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
because I know I see it constantly. You're like, I started it. I'm doing it all on my own. You're starting wrong. Just don't even start at all. Let me talk you out of starting.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it all on your own, it's just not. I would rather wake up in the morning, punch myself in the face, and eat my pillow than edit a podcast episode. But I have a whole team that loves it.
How important is podcast editing?
Very. Yeah. If you're just going to take a raw file and
sell me on the idea.
Well, if you press play on an episode and it was like no intro, no music, no anything, cold start, long intro in the very beginning, no outro, no editing, no adjusting the sound, no sound quality. It's just, I think people know. I don't think people need perfect and professional. I think they just, when they press play, music should be playing. An intro should happen. A clip from the episode can play. When the episode's done, music plays. An outro with a call to action happens. It looks like it's not some hodgepodge Mickey Mouse operation.
I like it. That was me asking as the person who has been hitting record and then just publishing them. So I love to hear that. What are the downside? Do you think it's worse not to start a podcast than it is to start a podcast that's not fully edited?
Yeah. Don't even start. Just do it right.
Words.
Just do it right, or don't do it at all.
I like it. Point taken. We'll make some changes around here.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's all kinds of AI tools and stuff out there now that can help with the process, but nothing's perfect. But you can find freelancers that will edit a podcast episode for next to nothing.
Let's talk about comedy. Why comedy?
Because I was terrified of it.
I love it. I love that.
I could go deliver a keynote to 5,000 people, but you asked me to go tell jokes to 50 drunk people. I'm like, I'm out. So I had a guy on my podcast that started the Miami comedy scene, told him that story, and he was like, yeah, there's no way. I've been following you for a couple of years. You're a speaker. How can you not do comedy? Why don't you come out to our open mic next week? I'll put you up for 5 minutes. You can bring your notes, whatever. I'm like, all right, cool. So I did that and prepared for it. Was going to do like a 5-minute set, and I get there and he said, all right, cool. You're third up. I'm like, on the open mic? He's like, no, in the showcase with 5 other comics, so don't bomb. And I crushed it. I did like a 7-minute set, and I didn't start doing it because I want to be a Netflix special and I want to be the next, Theo Vaughn. That's not it at all. I did it because I was scared of doing it, and then it also complements my speaking business. And then year before last, maybe it was last year. I don't know. Then I hosted one at Apex too, and I did a 45-minute set. And
that's a long set.
Yeah, it was. And then it was that was like the Netflix special. I converted converted the Apex Theater into a comedy club, and Stuma was in the show, and Danny was the MC for it with his puppet, and
Danny,
my daughter introduced me.
Show.
Yeah, he did great. He did great. That was one of his best performances to date, in my opinion.
That's funny.
But yeah,
so I
don't do as much of it, but again, when the opportunity presents itself, usually it's around my speaking stuff. So I'll deliver a keynote, and then there's, hey, you need me to roast the attendees at the cocktail hour tonight, or I'm just blazing my own trail with it.
What was the biggest fear that you got over as you got into comedy? Like what surprised you about it?
That I'm really good at it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Did you find like do you just riff, or do you really take time?
No, you have to write. No, you have to write. Yeah.
And then how's the memorization process? Like, or is that something you were used to doing anyway for Keynote?
Well, for my show in Dallas, I had a confidence monitor. So I just had like an outline of my whole show on that confidence monitor that I could constantly reference back to. I don't know if that's cheating or not, but we pulled it off.
I think
no
you
one
do
can
whatever
see
you
it.
want.
It's at the foot of the stage. You can't really go and see it. But yeah, I spent a couple of months planning that out, and writing 45 minutes of material is an eternity. So yeah, it was.
Because jokes have got to go fast. They've got to land. You can't just like drag out the stories, or people are going to start yawning.
Well, and that's not just that. It's everything has to lead it up to something else, to a certain extent.
You got to wrap the whole thing up so it like concludes with something you probably said close to the beginning. And
yeah, those are called tiebacks. So yeah, it's being able to, and I don't know that I've mastered all of that yet. This was more of like probably a good 40 or 45 jokes, maybe 30, 35 jokes. I don't know however many ended up there, but now all that material's there. So I go back to what worked from there. And then I've always got that in my back pocket. So I can go at any given time and see. I was in New Orleans a couple of years ago, and I walked out of a networking event after a gig that I had for like an insurance conference, and there was a comedy club, and it was open mic night. So I went back to the networking event. I pulled like 10 people out of there. I was like, hey, remember I told you to do comedy? I'm doing a set in about 10 minutes. You want to go? And I did like 7 minutes off the cuff, just out of nowhere there in New Orleans. So that was fun. So
that's cool.
It's just shit like that where I'm like, check plus on the comedy stuff.
Yeah,
and it's about like being funny all the time is comedy at its core. So I try to focus on cracking people up as much as I possibly can at all times, so that when it's time to actually do comedy, it's not as much of a task because I'm used to being funny anyway.
You've been reading people all day, basically,
right,
as you interact with them and whatnot. Yeah. Who's your favorite comedian to watch or study?
Right now, Theo Von, Matt Rife, Nate Bargatze, Barsgett. What's his name?
Bargatze.
Yeah, fantastic.
Like that,
He's my favorite clean comic. John Christ is my other favorite clean comic.
Yeah.
Both those guys do incredible work and don't cuss. Very admirable. And they're very, very good at what they do. Rogan's not bad. I didn't used to think he was. I thought he was better at UFC than he was at comedy, but his last special wasn't bad. Shane Gillis. Any of the guys that hang out with Rogan are great. Kill Tony's great.
Kill Tony has a whole interesting thing going on there. That's pretty off the wall.
Yeah, that's an empire. That's an empire. And he is, the best part about that show and Tony is that he started from the bottom. He started doing that show at the Comedy Store in LA, down in the basement room, and like 10 people would show up, and has built it to now. They're doing dual night arenas now. But he discovers a lot of great talent, and he's also in Rogan's circle. And Rogan has put his flag in the ground in Austin and turned Austin into the comedy capital. I mean, everyone has left LA and relocated to Austin because of the comedy scene and what's happening there.
The culture that he brought. Yeah, I find Vaughn is such an accidental comic, is what it always feels like.
He is. Did you know he was on Road Rules on MTV back in the day?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, remember the show Road Rules where they rode around in an RV? It was kind of like Real World, but they put them all in an RV.
Yeah, what I mean by accidental comic, I should clarify, is like when he reads. I actually haven't listened to a ton of his comedy, but I've listened to his podcast a lot.
And his podcast is great.
His ad reads are just hilarious. The tonality he uses, the words that he throws in there are just hilarious.
Yeah, no, he's. I was watching a clip on this morning with him and Tommy Lee, and they were talking about doing cocaine, and he was like, "Yeah, when we're doing like some of these nights, you come up with all these crazy ideas," and then Theo's like, "Yeah, man, some of those nights, like you'll give your email address to a dolphin and be like, I'm gonna follow up with you in the morning."
Yeah, like I said, just accidental off the wall stuff.
Yes, and I think that's just the way he is. That's how he operates.
I think it is too. I think he just says whatever's on his mind, and then some of it's absolutely hilarious. Most of it is, and then some of it you're just like, interesting. Where did that come from?
Yes, exactly.
Love it. So comedy, I love that that was like kind of breaking out of a fear of yours.
Everything we want in this world is right outside our comfort zone.
What's a big one that you're pushing right now, or that you've recently pushed through? Maybe you can't tell us some of them, but
um,
you were recently on Billboard, I think. That's a pretty cool one.
yeah, that was, again, so, continuing to lean into the fact of being willing to spend money. I think Apex was like my first real experience of like reaching into my pocket and investing in myself. And when I was able to take an $8,000 investment and turn it into $250,000, I was sold on that.
Yep.
I got into a little bit of a sales slump for about a month and change last year, right before the election, kind of a funky time.
Yep.
And I connected with Dan Martell at that time.
Ooh.
And he's a fucking beast of a human being. And
Absolutely.
he spoke at MDM, but I went to go take a nap. So I missed his session, but I kept hearing about him in the book. And like, I kept hearing about him everywhere. And it was like, Dan. Well, he's big on sell by chat, specifically on Instagram. So I followed him, and he did what he normally does. Hey, thanks for following me. It's great to connect. Are you here for the content or here to grow your business? I'm like, both. And then he just walks you through the park on this whole entire framework that he has to sell by chat. And he was like, so I have coaching available. It's $9,000 a year. I was like, there's no way right now. Like, no. Like I'm borderline panicking. I think all business owners do that silently. Even though I've been doing this 9 years, and it is always, and I mean always, worked out, and the business and the company is profitable, and we always do well. And so, but you go a month and a half with no deals, you're like, fuck, what's going on here? So I told him, like, I'm mildly panicking. And he's like, well, that's not going to do any good. First of all. Second of all, the resistance is highest when it's time to level up. So the next day I was like, all right, cool, whatever. We kept the conversation going. It was like back and forth. The next afternoon, I was downstairs in the grocery store, and I run into my buddy Brady, who I used to do his foodie events here in Miami. He does them all across the nation. He lives in Atlanta. He was there with one of his wine clients in the wine aisle at the grocery store on a Friday afternoon, and was like, hey man, I have my culinary consulting firm now, and this, that, and the other. I sold the foodie event business that I was doing, and what are you up to these days? And we should talk about the podcast stuff. It's good to see you again. And I'm in Dan Martell's group. And I was like, what? And then I reached out to a couple of Apex like OGs that actually know Dan personally. And Chris Kelly, also an Apex in the group. Andrew Horrigan, also an Apex in the group. Stuman loves Martell, brought him in to speak there. So all this shit was lining up. So he has 3 options. I think you can join for 2 months, 6 months, or 9 months. Obviously 9 months is or 12 months. 12 months is the best deal. I joined for 2 months. I was like, let's see how it goes. And then I think he's like, you can upgrade. So I did that apprehensively, leaned in, jumped in. It's all remote. It's a remote group. We meet every Wednesday on Zoom. There are 550 people on this call every single week.
Wow.
550 fucking people on a Zoom call every single week. So I was like, well, Dan, there's probably people in your group who want to start a podcast. Yes, because that's what I teach. Like, go pro, start creating content. Yes, this is the way you're going to grow your business, and you're going to get to learn from me, and you're going to meet new people, all the above. So I think I closed like 1 deal after a couple of weeks, and then my crypto XRP like went through the moon. Like I bought XRP at like 46 cents. It's hovering around 250 right now. It went up to like 325. So I made a bunch of money with that. So I just pulled $6,000 out of that and upgraded for the rest of the year. As soon as I did, so I'm $9,000 in now with Martell, paid for the year. I'm good through November, and we've signed 5 clients onto the agency. I think we've made like close to 45 grand on that $9,000 investment. And that was, 3 months ago. So who knows what's going to happen for the rest of the year. So that was a big,
and the coaching with Dan probably isn't half bad either, right?
Dude, the guy is ripped, rich, and rare is hard to argue with. Like the guy is like Chris Kelly told me. I don't know if you know Chris or not, but
I know of him. Yeah.
He's like, this is the best coaching I've ever had in my entire life. Like, and he just had an exit. And he's doing his VA stuff. Yeah.
Very cool.
And he's still up in the mix and still like, rolling his sleeves up and what's next here. And then like, I'll be on like the Apex call for entrepreneurs, and I'll be talking about my experience in Martell. I mean, what other mastermind can you talk about another mastermind that you join? Remember, that's kind of taboo. Like, hey, what pond are you fishing in, pal? But Stuman loves it. And I got a great relationship with Ryan anyway, and I've been in Apex entrepreneurs for 4 years now. So I consider myself a leader in the organization and really that go-to. I've seen a couple podcasts, people attempt to show up. They're no longer part of the mix anymore on there. But I think between Apex and Martell's group, and by the way, if you're listening to this and you're like, wow, Martell's group sounds fantastic, just follow him and say, hey, I heard one of your members talking about Elite. I'd love more information. And he'll be more than happy to close close you like an open-faced sandwich and never talk to you one time on the phone. Yeah, I think that's been the most recent, is getting real uncomfortable. I'm good. I'm okay getting uncomfortable because I'm all about doing the deep work, going in, figuring this out, but also leaning in and, continuing to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's life.
Yeah. I love your close you like an open-faced sandwich. Do you want to hear an analogy of a really bad salesman that I heard today?
Yeah.
Like that guy couldn't even close a door.
Yeah. You
I'm
couldn't
like,
close
okay.
you couldn't close an open-faced barn. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I laughed when I heard that earlier today. Well, Sebastian, this has been fun. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you jumping on, sharing your love and passion for podcasts, comedy, all that stuff. Where can people find you, and how can they get in touch?
Instagram, Podcasts Suck. That's plural. That's 2 S's. Podcasts Suck. Just give me a follow. I will message you just like Martell does, and just tell me you found me on the show here, and I'd love to connect with you further. LinkedIn under my name, Facebook under my name as well. I hang out on Instagram the most, though.
Amazing. Well, guys, you heard some nuggets here. Now the task for you is to take action, but not take action yourself. Reach out to someone like Sebastian who can take action for you and with you. All you've got to do is reach out to him. He'll help you get set up. You can then just sit back, interview your ideal prospects, your ideal power partners, your ideal potential big whales in your community, and have fun conversations, which lead to networking, which lead to people knowing, liking, and trusting you, and eventually doing business with you. So that's the nugget here. Decide you're going to do it, commit, and then talk to someone like Sebastian. So get out there, be hungry, keep coloring outside the lines, and make it happen. We'll talk soon.